Karate Kid Legends tells the story of a young man who goes to a new city, meets a girl, gets bullied, ultimately leading him to be trained and enter into a karate tournament. That about sums it up. This past Thursday, I went to go see Karate Kid Legends in theaters, and as stated in my out-of-theater reaction, somewhere up here, I really enjoyed this movie. However, there were some elements that did not work in the film's favor. The film takes place in New York and follows teenager Li Fong as he goes throughout the city trying to deal with his past trauma and his desire to fight, ultimately leading him to enter into a karate tournament. So with the main plot out of the way, let's jump right into the positives. The first positive I have with the film is its idea and concept. While not executed seamlessly, the idea of tying in what was intended to be a remake of the original Karate Kid back into the original franchise is unique and something interesting to do 15 years later after the fact. Additionally, I have to applaud the new elements that are implemented in the film, beginning with the protagonist of Lee, portrayed by Ben Wang. Unlike Daniel, Dre, or even Julie, Lee begins the story as a trained martial artist. This gave a lot of opportunities for dynamic fight scenes and choreography, almost right from the beginning of the film, without spending excess time on simply training up to one big final fight. And although Lee is trained in Kung Fu, he still takes a fair amount of damage in every single fight that he's in a style similar to John Wick or the film Nobody. Lastly, with the character of Lee, I appreciate how his battle is more internal, rather than being of just him fighting a bully. As mentioned before, the story revolves around him confronting his trauma, confronting his past, and really when he enters a tournament, he's entering on his own terms. He's not doing it because he's bullied or pressured into doing so. And that's something that I thought was very unique to this entry. Speaking of fighting, the filmmakers did a good job of incorporating various martial arts within one movie, such as Kung Fu, boxing, and of course, karate, versus the previous entries when only one art form was acknowledged. And the film doesn't only acknowledge these martial arts, they strategically incorporate bits and pieces from each one into different fight scenes within the story. So towards the middle, you have the incorporation of boxing with Kung Fu, and then towards the end, you have the incorporation of Kung Fu with karate, with Mr. Han and Daniel. Finally, with the fighting, the film does something interesting that has not been done before, setting a trap for the opponent. Now don't get me wrong, the quote-unquote finishing moves of every Karate Kid entry has been memorable and iconic. The crane kick, the drum technique, whatever this was. The snake hypnosis from the 2010 film. But none of those moments were strategically planned to be used in the fight and to exploit the opponent's expectations. So that strategic element of planning rather than just simply training for the fight is something that I thought was new and, to my knowledge, has not been done in the series previously. Final positive that I have for this film is the characters. As mentioned before, you have Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio returning to their previous roles with a lot of great comedy and a lot of back and forth between those two characters of Daniel and Mr. Han. And as alluded to in my out-of-theater reaction, they never hijack the movie in any way. They really don't show up until halfway to two-thirds into the runtime. What really blew me away with these characters is the fact that they avoided a lot of unnecessary and typically annoying character tropes. So when Lee meets Mia, the love interest in the film, the filmmakers do not take the typical disapproving parent angle as seen in previous entries. Lee and Mia's father actually get along very well and develop a strong bond and a great friendship throughout the runtime of the film. When Lee is upset with Mia, they actually have a conversation and address the issue rather than doing the old misunderstanding trope and dragging that conflict out for 10 to 15 minutes. One concern that I did have going into the film was that the filmmakers would fall into the trope of having Daniel and Mr. Han clash over their martial arts styles and techniques. Thankfully, that fear was quickly relieved. Instead, while they do have disagreements, the two show a lot of respect towards one another and their martial art forms, and it actually leads to a few humorous moments where Lee is caught in the middle of this tug-of-war and these friendly disputes. Now, the mixed aspects. And for this category, I really only have two bones to pick with the film. The first being the visuals. Specifically towards the beginning of the film, the filmmakers use a lot of stylistic flourishes with subtitles, scene transitions, and even a point system throughout the karate tournament itself. And while I do appreciate this bolder and unique and expressive style, I'm not 100% that it works. I'd have to see the film a couple more times before I can officially make that decision. Additionally, some of the choreography and camera movement within the fight scenes are extremely well executed and look great. But there are some moments where the camera is very shaky and just hard to keep up with what's happening within the scene. So when the cinematography works, it works. When it doesn't, it really doesn't. And that is why it's in the mixed category. The last mixed aspect that I have is the familiar story beats. Now, some fans may see this and appreciate the callbacks to previous movies and keeping a similar structure to how those other films operated. But in some parts of the story, it made it feel bland and predictable. So I still wonder if there's enough new to balance out the familiar elements. Again, mixed category. Now, last but not least, the negatives. And for this, I really only have one big one, and that would be the pacing of the story. For me personally, after a specific event that happens towards the midpoint of the film, and Jackie Chan comes to New York, I feel like the pacing just falls apart. Where the last third and the last half, training feels a little bit rushed, the tournament feels a little bit rushed. Although there was these great elements throughout, such as the intercutting between the training and the tournament itself, there were a couple times where I felt like the characters weren't allowed to slow down at any point. And I feel it caused some characters to not really get any development. Specifically the character of Connor, who is supposed to be the antagonist of this movie and the final opponent in the karate tournament. And I say he feels underdeveloped because leading up to the tournament, I was on the edge of my seat, I was invested, honestly more invested than I was in some of the sequels in this franchise. And the fight came and went, and it did not feel that fulfilling. And I think a big reason for that is that we do not spend a whole lot of time with the character of Connor. Unlike other antagonists, he's not a constant force throughout the entire runtime of the movie. He pops up a couple times here and there, and him and Lee honestly do not have too many interactions out of a handful. So I wonder if the filmmakers had another 15 to 30 minutes to give his character some more development and, I guess, build up more to that final encounter, if that would have been a better movie. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a smile on my face from beginning to end, and I appreciated the fact that there was no direct callback to previous movies or even the Cobra Kai series. It's a film that can be watched on its own without any major context required. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this new movie, what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you would recommend it to a friend. Take care, and God bless.